The story will focus on a young gambler named Lupe who is currently in a pretty dire condition after losing a big bet, losing money and even his own life because of it.
是一场我输掉的游戏。
A few weeks before Lupe experienced this dire condition, he often visited a place. Gambling is not to play legally, but to find prey, who will play by paying attention to various aspects, such as a beginner, whose mental condition is not yet perfect to play. After successfully finding prey, Lupe will invite him to play without realizing that it is a trick so that the beginner can be fooled and finally bet all his wealth. It turns out that behind his crime, Lupe is a dutiful son. He uses the money he gets to treat his sick mother, where currently his mother is in need of a blood donor, which is very expensive. One day, when Lupe was about to work as usual at the casino, he was also usually approached by a man who invited him to bet on a coin toss. Although at first he refused, but because the bet was very large, especially the man who invited him looked like a beginner, Lupe was sure that he could win, but
第一的游戏我不陌生，只要找好地点。
the old man was the owner of a casino. The place where Lupe worked was called Mr. Kin, who before leaving his father gave Lupe 7 days to pay off all his debts and asked all security forces to prohibit Lupe from returning to where he was.
100万，给你7天时间。
After the incident at the casino, we will be shown Lupe who intends to kidnap Mr. Kin's son to get ransom money. It doesn't need to be much as long as his debt to Sichuan can be paid off in less than 7 days. From a distance, Lupe saw Mr. Shin's son named Xiao just leave the house in an unusual way so that Lupe could only follow from behind before taking action according to his plan. Instead of successfully catching Xiao, Lupe almost died. By Xiao himself, instead of killing the person who was going to kidnap him, Xiao invited him to eat at a restaurant that was open 24 hours.
朋友。
At the restaurant, Xiao suggested that Lupe kidnap someone else. He had to do that because he would not get anything from it, even though his father was rich. But Mr. Shin never considered him as a son. Even in his heart, he hoped Xiao died soon. He felt sorry for.
我有个办法可以帮你还债，在巴西有一个土著部落。
Lupe Fada, Xiao finally offered. A bet, yes, it will pay off. Lupe's debt to his father was that he could win gambling with him. And try, guess what, Lupe, lost in that game? So apart from not being able to get money, he also has to obey the will. Xiao, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely Lupe. Immediately left it at that time. Arriving at Lupe's house, apparently it was followed by Xiao, who begged for allowed to stay for one night, where Lupe allowed Asa Xiao to stay safe and don't touch his stuff without permission. After feeling that Xiao was asleep, Lupe rushed into the treatment room, his mother with the intention of replacing him. Blood, so that the transfusion process can be carried out, continued, but after seeing his blood supply was down to 2 bags. Just like that, Lupe immediately went to the pharmacy, illegal place where he bought new blood. Just come there. There suddenly...
不怕遭报应。
现在血越来越难搞啊，觉得不合适，去别的地方买啊。
Yes, Lupe, kidnapped by Mr. Xin, maybe it's threatened, will immediately pay off the debt before due, and if it gets to the end, it doesn't. Can pay it off, Mr. Qin will sell all internal organs on the black market.
肝脏是6万，95万，肺12万。
When he returned home, Lupe immediately kicked Xiao out and wiped the spiridol on his body. He was very frustrated with what had just happened to him until he finally remembered Xiao's words at the restaurant where they first talked, which turned out that Xiao asked Lupe to kidnap him and let Lupe use the ransom money without sharing a penny. Lupe, who had no other choice, finally told Xiao to come back in. He agreed to the kidnapping suggested by Xiao, where they immediately made a plan to make it seem like the kidnapping really happened.
首先，我们要让秦海培相信他的女儿被绑架了，
直接给他打电话不就行了？
只有最傻的王妃才会那么干。
Was considered suitable for one of the many plans they made. Lupe finally took action by sending Xiao's jacket to Mr. Qin's house to make it look like Xiao was really kidnapped, then sending a live chat to Mr. Qin via a foreign site so that it would not be tracked by the police, where Xiao asked his father for a ransom of 10 million yen, even though Lupe himself actually did not agree.
投入不大，游戏怎么能有意思？
这个有些引导式。
It's just curiosity asking why he acted this far, where he explained that he just wanted to be a child, who was loved by both of his parents, could freely do whatever he wanted, not having to be locked up in the house, like a Lupe bird that is currently trapped in a cage.
又有什么区别？
欢迎光临，欢迎光临，欢迎光临。
Some time passed. Finally, Lupe got a message that makes it quite nervous, but unfortunately the message is just spam, in the form of a promotion so that he plays on the site Mr. Qin. Because time keeps on running without, there is a reply from Mr. Qin. Lupe, too, decided to go home. Someone, the old man, just came and must return after receiving notification from his cell phone. When he got home, he immediately saw his mother, fortunately, besides being happy about it. Said Rupp was also given a surprise in the form of a delicious dish made from fresh meat, which turned out to be his own pet.
尝尝。
Even though he was still annoyed by the incident, the Xiao immediately hid Lupe in his mother's room before Mr. Xin realized that at this time, his son was at home after Mr. Xin. Enter his house. They seem to stare at each other without much talk. At that critical moment, Mr. Xin instead, curious about a door that locked until he asked Lupe to opening it, he revealed the contents inside, behind the door, which turned out to be after the person he hated the most. That left, Lupe immediately approached Xiao to ask him out. How he was surprised when he saw his mother, lying on the floor with his feet up bloody.
大家，
After handling emergency, Lupe then told about the woman she was caring for. It turned out that the woman was not her mother, but the director of the orphanage. Lupe is an orphan who was rescued by the director by giving her a place to live, food and education until high school, until one day Lupe made a mistake, and it had an impact on the foundation, where she lived. I don't know what she had actually done, but what is certain is that the foundation's donors one by one withdrew, so that to feed the orphanage children, the mother had to scavenge all the way to the neighborhood chemical factory because of her hard work. The mother was diagnosed with a disease called hematology, or a blood disorder. So in order to survive, Lupe had to provide fresh blood to be transfused to the mother, who currently requires a lot of blood cells. While he was telling the story, Lupe suddenly got an entry message from Mr. Qin, where he would take part in Lupe's game to determine which of them would win. After the connection was finished, she remembered the last message he sent to his friend in the next town. Because before leaving for Lupe's place, Xiao apparently sent a message to his friend in town because he intended to stay at his friend's house. However, because he didn't get an answer, and also didn't have any money and his cell phone battery was dead, Xiao decided to go to Lupe's place. So with that message, the police could meet. Xiao's friend who would most likely report this to the police. After finding out that his friend had been kidnapped, which is what happened, will immediately reveal their lies about the kidnapping.
大家要是为什么要来我家？
The next day, they would go straight to Haicheng to meet their friend. When they arrived at the location, Xiao immediately went to her friend's apartment while Lupe herself waited in the car that Xiao had just left. Suddenly, right after the owner of the car that hit her banged on Lupe's car to apologize, a policeman came to help her mother apologize, where Lupe immediately pretended to call someone and ignored both of them so she could catch up with Xiao, Yang, who was also finished with his business.
跟我走。
Lupe immediately took Xiao to a hotel not far from that place and immediately told Xiao to send a message that was embellished with a little drama to make it look like as if she was really kidnapped. She did that because she received a message from Mr. Qin, who wanted to know if his son was okay.
我要家。
你放心。
After receiving the message, Mr. Qin finally starts to give in and asks him to look after him to make sure he's okay, to which Mr. Qin will do as he says. I want to hope that nothing happens to my child.
上海的，我会按你们说的做。
After the conversation ends with Xiao starts teasing Lupe by leaning on her back, which makes Lupe very vulnerable and starts showing that she really likes Xiao, who was currently with him.
能带我去密定山山顶待会儿吗？
That night, Lupe took Xiao to Mingjin Mountain according to his wishes. He just wanted to remember his childhood memories of his father. Took him to this mountain. Even though the memories with his father were not as beautiful as imagined, at least he still had something to remember there.
自由自在。
Xiao asked what the money he got would be used for. He answered that the money would be used for his mother's medical needs. Then he looked for a magic medicine that he hoped would cure.
我就想见你呢。
Her one day, Lupe gave Xiao a bracelet to use as a tracking device, where Xiao, who was feeling worried, asked if Lupe would come with her to Brazil after all this was over, to which Lupe refused and accepted the offer because in reality, she couldn't go anywhere considering that her mother needed her care when the game started. Mr. Qin had prepared ransom money for his son, where he gave instructions to Mr. Qin to deliver the money to a place called Haicheng. Even though he was alone, it seemed that Mr. Qin was being followed by many police. Even so, Lupe stuck to his plan, because he couldn't back down anymore and ran away from the police, who were following Mr. Qin now. It turns out that Lupe already had a very simple plan, but it worked very well. Escape from the police. Lupe asked Mr. Qin to go to the roof of a hotel to throw his money which someone
我到了。
would immediately take. It turned out that the person who took the money was Xiao himself, who, when he arrived at Xiao and Lupe's place, met someone who approached them. The person seems to know Xiao and vice versa, which could make their plans fall apart. After arriving at a safe place, Lupe immediately tied Xiao's hands again and told him to go to the supermarket for help. The bracelet she wore yesterday. Initially, he wanted to take it back, but he chose to keep the bracelet as a last memento of Lupe before they really parted
所以
ways.
你还是只是把它当成一场游戏。
不然呢？
On the way home, I forgot to get into an accident. He found his mother crawling on the floor, probably because she had fallen. Her bad luck didn't stop there, because after taking her mother to the hospital, Lupe actually received news from Mr. Qin about the discovery of Xiao's body on Mount Mingjin. So, apart from the kidnapping case, now Lupe has to face. With a murder case confirmed by the police, Lupe couldn't deny it even though she wasn't the perpetrator.
你已经拿到钱了，为什么还要杀了他？
When Xiao's photo appeared on the news, he realized that he had been tricked. He didn't know what the fraudster's motive was and who the person who was with his mother was. Declared dead when Lupe was still confused about the series of events that happened to her. Her mother's death devastated Lupe. He vents his anger by destroying the house and viewing recordings of his mother moments before she died.
院长拖累了你。
3 days later, Xiao came to Lupe. Place to apologize for what happened to Lupe, asking what his real name was. Xiao explained that his name was Xiu Wu, which was slightly different from the name of his murdered sister. Yes, because the name is both Xiao, we'll just continue. We'll still call his name Xiao there. She said that his younger sister was a connoisseur of forbidden powder, who one night became a good older sister. Xiao stole the powder when his younger sister was still drunk in the bathhouse. Because younger sister was angry, he threatened his older sister to strangle him to return the powder, which happened to be his father passing by and stopping them, but when Xiao was about to call an ambulance, his father held him and left younger sister to die, not without reason. Because his younger sister has tarnished Mr. Qin's good name due to his younger sister's naughty social interactions. Plus, Mr. Qin will nominate himself as mayor. His movements were very limited due to his younger sister's actions. So it was answered that the death of his younger brother was nothing to him and was actually an advantage for the smooth running of the campaign. The man who came to them when they had completed their mission. It was his sister's boyfriend who got him into a vicious circle. He's the only jerk who gets Mr. Qin into trouble. Next, we will be taken back to when Lupe was still a cheater at Mr. Qin's casino. At that time, it turned out that Mr. Qin already knew all about his actions and had no intention of disturbing him at all. Because Lupe was still a very smart child, when this incident happened, Mr. Qin started to think about making Lupe a scapegoat. He started the game with Mr. Qin Yang as the main character.
事情还没计划的。
这是他的游戏，是他选中了你。
Knowing what happened to him and what happened to Xiao was just a game. Lupe could only mourn his loss, and that the bird was still alive.
就像这只鸟，从头到尾都是黑色的。
欢迎光临，欢迎。
A few days later, Xiao went to a place with a locker. That was Lupe's order to give Xiao her share of the kidnapping drama. The money was already full without Lupe taking her share, because Lupe herself didn't really need the money.
怕你一个人赢不了身，所以决定陪你一起去。
Lupe was kidnapped by Mr. Qin and was about to be let go, and Lupe, who was still confused about what really happened, asked how Mr. Qin could win. Since Lupe first met Mr. Qin, he has shown his evil attitude. To him, make him believe that Mr. Qin is a bad person, and forget to trust him completely. Now he starts playing the role of a real bad guy. So Lupe, who is pushed to the limit, ends up digging his hole, dulling all his skills and becoming increasingly engrossed in the drama.
都会让你更快地入局，带着这些杂念和察言观色的本领就不起作用。
Actually, Mr. Qin let it go. Lupe makes off with the ransom money with him, where Lupe even asked about the mother's death, which indeed, he died unnaturally, and Mr. Qin admitted indirectly that he was the murderer.
你逼死了园长。
游戏结束，
The next day, he forgot to see Xiao's activities across the building where he worked, immediately contacted the woman he loved and asked if he would come with her to Brazil, because apparently Lupe had bought 2 tickets for them. Since that incident, Xiao began to reflect on what he should do, to convince himself to leave his father and his current luxuries, in order to only be with Lupe, the person he really liked from first sight.
决定陪你一起去。
Meanwhile, Mr. Qin, who was being questioned by the police regarding the kidnapping of his youngest child, actually received a message, call stating that his second child had also been kidnapped, where he immediately assumed that the kidnapper was Lupe, who was going to take revenge. So Mr. Qin immediately contacted Lupe to go back to gambling on the coin toss, with Lupe this time making the head his choice.
老板，
这层硬皮游戏，
我在画。
Xiao himself did not find Lupe at the airport, who, after remembering his tracking bracelet, he found Lupe was at the hotel and followed her right away. Then Xiao finds Lupe and her father in the same place, where she chooses the man she loves and immediately became angry after he was lied to.
就在不久前，我刚喝下你为我准备的红酒。
怎么？现在是在报复我吗？
Knowing that Lupe is still playing with her father, Xiao tells her that her father is with her. The police came to this place, where Xiao didn't realize that this incident had been forgotten to take into account from the start. And guess what would happen?
我爸现在已经带着警察上来了。
Yes, apparently, the person Mr. Qin came to was none other than his youngest son's girlfriend. An addict, so this time now it's over for him to become mayor, because the police will start investigating him further. With this success, Lupe finally managed to breathe a sigh of relief, because she succeeded in avenging her mother's death, where Xiao didn't like what Lupe did, which must be how much love they both had, made Xiao melt again and decided to go with Lupe to Brazil.
我说，这是晚一点。
Very satisfying ending.